Hello, I am Ruby. I am Burly Bosoms on Twitter and Instagram. I just wanted to talk about Russell Brand's recent rant. Um, I've seen a lot of people online doing posts saying about how he's a hypocrite um, and how that it's not fair that he's talking about Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion's new music video, Wet Ass Pussy, WAP. But I think it's really important for us to actually analyse exactly how his views are wrong and unfounded. I want to try and steer clear of how it's baffling why a white man who has made his fortune of his own promiscuity feels the need to berate women doing the same. However, I cannot promise that I'll be able to do that completely. Okay, let's get into it. I want to start off analysing the title because that was the first thing that I was just like, what on earth, red flag. He titled it WAP with Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion, Feminist Masterpiece or Porn. Firstly, Russell, darling, those two things aren't mutually exclusive. You know, it's really complicated. But you can have a feminist masterpiece that is porn and porn that is a feminist masterpiece, you know? It doesn't have to be one thing or the other. Secondly, what about the music video that makes you think it's pornography? I mean, I get that it's hypersexualized, but no more than any other music video is at the moment. Soft porn, perhaps, but yeah, like what isn't? Is it the allusion to sex work and maybe potentially Cardi B's background as a stripper? But I mean, we know you did that interview with Rupert Everett in 2014, so we know that you support prostitution because you've been to prostitutes, haven't you? I need to probably stop talking to Russell as if he's actually going to watch this, don't I? I mean, I would personally just argue that it is just a masterpiece. And let it be like that. I think that's going to end up being my main point, rather than trying to fit it into a box of feminism or porn, which is quite reductive. So his first point, his first question that he wanted to ask was, do women achieve equality by aspiring and replicating the values established by their oppressor? This, I think, is the bit that most people had the biggest issue with, because this is where he started mansplaining feminism, which was just, weird. But short answer, no, obviously. Like, no, you've got to dismantle the system completely. But we all know that already. So why do you feel the need to kind of put 100 years of women's liberation and all of that pressure onto Megan Thee Stallion and Cardi B? That's incredibly unfair and reckless, I think. And also, this is just a music video, isn't it? It's not going to start the revolution. It's just for fun. It's a great video. Women can't do anything sexually promiscuous without setting women back 50 years, I guess. But why does everything that women put out into the world have to be feminist or unfeminist? Men are not and would never be subjected to the same standard. So this entire argument of, is it a feminist masterpiece, is inherently sexist. Men can make work informed by their personal male experience, and that is never regarded as them being explicitly comfortable with them being an oppressor, which is I'm sure something that Russell and a lot of men have never even considered, the fact that they are comfortable with being in that position if they are not actively dismantling it, which is what he was suggesting that Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion should be doing. He then moves on to talk about how hip-hop tropes of the potency of male sexuality are reductive. Firstly, I just think that's problematic that he's talking about how these tropes are bad when it's something that's so ingrained into black culture, as if he is a white man is never objectified in it. But that's separate, that's different, another video. WAP doesn't emulate those tropes though. The tropes that he's talking about is where the male sexuality is about domination, it's about having those women there that are submissive to him. It's not about just celebrating a big fat hard cock. It's a tool for the oppression of women, into sexual submission. I mean, that trend has been replicated in music videos by women. For example, Pink in Stupid Girls, Taylor Swift's Shake It Off, and Lily Allen's Hard Out Here, all white women that used the idea of the girls in the background of those hip hop music videos in their songs, and that was supposed to be, I guess, a critique of the sexist music industry, but also a really gratuitous, self-indulgent appraisal of how they, Pink, Swift, and Allen, are not like those poor women in the music videos. To quote Lily Allen's, I don't need to shake my ass for you because I've got a brain, as if those women don't have a brain. They refuse to be objectified in that way because they are too clever or too white, too privileged. And I think comparing WAP to those music videos and that trope is not only just damaging and factually wrong, but just really, really, really lazy. I mean, we could even look at the way that some, like, the men objectify women as a source of sexual power and compare that to Charlie XCX's Boys, where she invited men in the industry to be sexualized and romanticized in this hyper-feminine, bubblegum pink aesthetic, or even Lizzo's Boys, which is more explicitly sexual. But even these aren't oppressive because, firstly, you can't oppress your oppressor. But they're not aggressive. They're camp and they're fun, not in a dissimilar way to the way that the WAP video aesthetic was. But the context of sexualizing the boys is not to dominate them, but to appreciate and love them, and is also an ode to those artists' own their own sexuality and their love of having sex with those people because they enjoyed it. So you can't really compare those two. There was an allusion, though, in Russell's vid and a comment on the video which compared Cardi and Meghan to Pick Me Girls. If you don't know what Pick Me Girls are, Google it. I'm not your mother. But this could not be farther from the truth. It implies that women cannot be sexual beings on their own terms. It's so reductive. And the idea that they are only being sexually promiscuous in those videos to get ahead and to get the attention of men reduces them of all agency and is inherently unfeminist itself. I think to critique two black women whose bodies have been subjected to hypersexualization by the sexist and racist media and music industry, but when they can reclaim power and the sexual agency that white powerful men like Russell Brand and other men like that have been capitalizing on for centuries, and as soon as they reclaim that for their own benefit, you decide that they are doing a disservice to feminism, is abhorrent. I just think that holding each woman accountable to carry on the fate and then berating them for not doing enough when you're probably not doing anything bar making these, berating them, is exhausting. WAP can just be a celebration of female sexuality and an ode to pleasure without it having to start a revolution. But having said that, I think something that has been missed very, very specifically, which I'll come to in a minute, by Russell, he's missed the mark on the video, and he's missed a mark on the music. And I think I'm going to try and work it out, but there's a specific difference between male sexuality and culture and female sexuality, and that stems from psychology and the involvement that our genitalia plays into how we deal with sex and pleasure. Men are taught to hold their penis. They are physically able to see their phallus, and that gives them permission to masturbate and therefore become the architects of their own pleasure. And that phallus is, why Freud said all that stuff about penis envy. The penis is meant to be this great big symbol of importance, and I disagree, frankly. But because women were not taught to touch or see their vulvas or vaginas, girls aren't given the instruments from a young age to understand how to make sex pleasurable and how to touch themselves. They're not given permission, and it's frankly been shunned up until quite recently, the idea of female masturbation. And that's why female sexuality has been incorrigibly repressed in the Western world up until, I'd say, the 1970s and the emergence of the yoni workshops, where women were taught to look at their bodies and start being able to understand what felt good and what didn't. But despite this, there's this other theory that because of having breasts and the idea that we will one day be able to breastfeed, women are not as sexually restrictive as men because they're taught to have both male and female children on their breasts. Girls are far more likely to be more affectionate with other girls. You've got that maternal instinct, and then will be prone to kissing and cuddling from a young age up until old age with other women. And that is just something that is natural and seen as fine, and that's something that only girls really do. Like, you generally don't see boys kissing and cuddling their friends in the same way, which I think is sad, obviously. But what WAP does, with the milking fountain and the intimacy between Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion, which I guess you could even compare to the Beautiful Nightmare. There was that parallel of them lying down together with Shakira and Beyonce. Russell mistakes this as pornographic, and you can see why, because, but it's an ode to femininity and motherhood at its core, and everything that being a girl is about, I think. It's about, I think it is I'm surprised that there hasn't been more of an argument about how it's quite binary, isn't it? That I think it's fun, but WAP also does a service to every single vagina owner with the celebration of wetness. Being wet used to be seen as gross and unnecessary, and I'm sure every single vagina owner has had that experience where they're embarrassed about their vagina and it being wet or too wet, or and that's because women's pleasure isn't a priority in our society. It never has been, and this song is for everyone who has had uncomfortable sex with a partner because they weren't adequately turned on, and that's and I think it genuinely is it's done a better service for female sexuality in the few days that this video has been out than I think any sex ed class I've ever been to. It's an encouragement for every person with a vagina to take control of their pleasure and own it and be proud of it. And this is why Russell cannot ever understand this. This song isn't for him. I think it's in exactly this part that his critique stems from, because he doesn't understand it. He's saying that it's not radical and it fits within the constraints of the society that we're currently living in. But he doesn't, because he doesn't have a pussy, he sees the film as a product of female oppression and the use of being attractive as a commodity, because that's also the only way that he can view women. He can't see the kind of necessary beauty in it, because he's never had a vagina that's been wet. He doesn't have boobs. He isn't, I don't know, he doesn't see it. He sees girls in the other way. And I think this is something really strange that he mentioned. The feeling that he got from watching the video was not dissimilar to watching porn. I know, this is hugely dismissive of everything that Cardi B and Megan are doing for women that he cannot comprehend because he cannot think, because all the blood in his brain has rushed to his dick, and now he's just objectifying them because that's all he thinks about. And because he's aroused, it must be porn. And he asks, if the result is the same, then how distinct is the process, I wonder? This is reductive on so many levels, and I think it is from this exact sentence that we understand more about Mr. Brown's viewpoints than we have in the entire 17-minute, 20-second video where he's ranting and slagging off Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion for not doing enough for feminism, when it is him that is directly oppressing them because of his own previous standards and viewpoints. And because it turns him on, he's so scared that he's getting off on a feminist anthem that he shifts the guilt onto the authors. I don't understand why he's so uncomfortable. I mean, it makes sense. Is he jealous? Is he ashamed because he's never made a pussy wet enough? I don't know. Anyway, I think that's everything. I think I've gone a bit flustered. So I think that's it. Let me know. Russell, get back to us. Why do you hate women?